My son slammed the front door behind me hard enough to rattle the porch light. In one hand, I held 2 trash bags stuffed with the only things I was allowed to take. In the other, the crumpled $1,000 utility bill he threw at my face. "You're not my responsibility," he'd said. I stood there, numb, until I remembered the account he didn't know existed. He kicked me out over $1,000, not knowing I had $100,000 in his name. Not anymore. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. I wasn't always the woman standing on a porch with nowhere to go. There was a time I walked with purpose. A time I could make a patient laugh in the middle of a terminal diagnosis, or calm a scared child with nothing but a warm touch and steady eyes. I was a nurse for 32 years, a mother for 34. And for most of that time, I believed. The second title meant more. I raised my son, Daniel, almost entirely on my own after my husband passed away when Daniel was just 10. Gerald had a heart attack at work, a quiet death for a man who was anything but quiet in life. He left behind a rusting Ford, a pile of unpaid bills, and a boy who asked me every night for a year, "When's Daddy coming home?" From that moment on, I became 2 parents in one. I worked overtime in the ER, swapped night shifts to make his baseball games, learned how to patch drywall, do our taxes, and build a science fair volcano that erupted at the wrong time, but still earned him a blue ribbon because the judges liked his spirit. We weren't rich, but Daniel never felt the hunger I did. He wore new sneakers while I resoled mine, went to prom in a rented tux while I skipped dental visits to afford the deposit. When he got accepted into college, I cried for hours in the break room. I took out a parent loan, stupidly large, but I didn't care. That degree felt like mine too. When he graduated, he hugged me so tight I thought he might crack my ribs. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom," he whispered. Neither of us knew how true that was. He met a woman, got married fast, and within a year, their first baby arrived. I was thrilled, truly. I spent weekends knitting tiny hats, and even though arthritis made it harder, I didn't mind. I wanted to be part of their lives, of my grandchildren's lives. Then, when I turned 60, I fainted at work. My blood pressure was dangerously low, my joints were locking more often, and the doctor said, "You need to slow down." So I retired early, with a modest pension and a lifetime of fatigue built into my bones. Daniel suggested I move in just for a while until I got stronger. He said, "You helped me through everything. Now it's my turn." I believed him. I truly did. I sold my townhouse and moved in with him and his wife, Emily. It was supposed to be a transition, just a few months. Instead, it turned into 2 years of silent shifting lines. At first, it felt warm, like coming home. I cooked dinners, picked up the kids from daycare, did laundry, and clipped coupons like I always had. It gave me purpose. I thought I was helping. I thought I belonged. But slowly, things began to change. They started calling me extra hands instead of Mom. Their thanks turned to expectations. Little comments crept into conversations, jokes about the water bill, about how long. I ran the shower. Emily began rolling her eyes when I made suggestions. Still, I kept smiling. I reminded myself, they're busy. Young parents. Stressed. But in truth, I didn't want to admit what I was starting to see. I had become invisible in my own family. I kept contributing. Even after retirement, I paid for groceries, bought the kids' school clothes, gave them $500 when their car broke down. Quiet gifts, no strings. That's what mothers do, right? And yet, the more I gave, the more I felt I was slowly disappearing. One evening, while folding laundry, I overheard Emily on the phone. She said, "It's not like she's paying rent. She's lucky we even let her stay here." Lucky. That word twisted something inside me. I wasn't looking for praise, but I also wasn't looking to be reduced to charity. I had poured my life, Into this family, every inch of my youth, energy, and savings, and now I was a shadow with a folding basket. Still, I told myself not to make waves. I'd find a place soon. Just give them space. I didn't realize I was already being phased out. He once told me I was the reason he made it in life. I didn't realize that meant I was no longer needed once he got there. I started noticing the shift in small, quiet moments. Not the loud arguments you see in movies, but the slow erosion of kindness. At first, it was Emily's tone. The way she said, "Can you?" when she really meant, "You better." "Can you pick up the kids from school? I've got errands." "Can you get dinner started? We're both swamped." "Can you take the baby tonight? We need sleep." I always said, yes. I said yes when I was tired, yes when my knees ached, yes even when I had to reschedule my own doctor appointments. Because I thought, this is what family does. We fill in the cracks for each other. But soon, it became clear I wasn't filling cracks. I was the crack. They rarely asked if I needed anything. I remember one night I came home from a clinic visit with a wrist brace and no one noticed. I cooked dinner with one hand while they scrolled on their phones, and the comments grew sharper. "Daniel, you left the kitchen light on again. Our electric bill's crazy lately." Emily, "Can you not use the dryer during the day? We're trying to conserve." Daniel again, "You don't really need the heater on upstairs, right? It's just you up there. Little things." But layered over time, they became heavy. They started locking the thermostat. I had to ask for the code. I didn't. I just wore 2 sweaters. They changed the Wi-Fi password once and forgot to give it to me. I asked, and Daniel said, "Oh, sorry. I thought you didn't really need it." One afternoon, I overheard Emily laughing on the phone with her sister. "She just hangs around the house, like a pet you forgot to return." That one stung. I was 62, not senile, and yet they treated me like I had outlived my usefulness. The worst part? I kept convincing myself it was temporary. Then came the money talk. Daniel sat me down at the kitchen table one Sunday. Emily stood behind him, arms crossed like a silent referee. He started with compliments. "Mom, we appreciate everything you've done," that kind of thing. Then he said it. "But we're at a place now where we need to set clearer expectations. Boundaries." He slid a piece of paper across the table. A list of monthly expenses: rent, groceries, utilities, childcare. A neat little line at the bottom: "Your contribution, $1,200 month." I blinked. "Daniel, you know I'm retired, right?" He nodded. "Yeah, but you still get pension and Social Security, and you've been living here rent-free for 2 years. I reminded him of the groceries, the babysitting, the car payments I helped with, the times I dipped into my savings to cover their credit card bills without ever keeping score. He shrugged. "I know, and that was generous, but this is about moving forward." Emily added, "We're not trying to be mean, but this is our house. We need to run it like adults." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I went upstairs, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed I'd paid for when he got married. I felt a strange mix of shame and anger, not for what they were doing, but for how small they were making me feel. I thought I'd raised a kind man, thought he'd remember how I'd filled his lunchbox every morning, sat in waiting rooms during every injury, stood outside his college dorm holding back tears as I waved goodbye. I never kept receipts. Love doesn't come with ledgers, but now I wished I had. A week later, the tension thickened. They stopped saying good morning. The kids were shuttled away from me more and more. Emily muttered things like, "She's home all day. Why can't she handle it?" when I said I was too tired to watch the baby. Then came the bill. It was taped to my door, a printed copy of the past 3 months' utility charges, highlighted in yellow. $1,043.89. Please resolve ASAP. No conversation. No explanation, just a passive-aggressive post-it. "We can't cover this for you." I stood there, staring at it for a long time. Not because I couldn't pay. I could. That wasn't the issue. It was the gall, the disrespect, the implication that I was a freeloader, that I hadn't already paid in ways they'd never acknowledge. That night, Daniel didn't come up to talk. He left his door closed. But I heard him laughing with Emily. Warm, comfortable laughter. Like I didn't exist on the other side of the wall, like I wasn't their mother. The next time he knocked on my door, it wasn't to talk. It was to hand me a trash bag and say, "You need to go." It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. The house was unusually quiet. No cartoons blaring from the TV, no footsteps running up and down the hallway. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breath as I folded towels in the laundry room. Daniel appeared in the doorway. No knock, no hello. Just standing there, arms crossed, a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. "I need to talk to you," he said. I followed him into the living room, where Emily was already seated on the couch, arms folded tightly across her, chest like she was holding herself back from saying what she really wanted to. He held up the utility bill. "This is the third month in a row, over $1,000. I checked the usage, spikes during the day, long periods of heat and power." He didn't ask. He accused. "You're home all day. It's you." I blinked, confused. "Daniel, the kids are here too. And Emily works from home. That's not the point." His tone was sharp now. "You're not contributing. We've asked for help and you just pretend like it's not your problem." I stared at him. "You think I'm not helping?" Emily cut in. "We're not trying to be ungrateful, but honestly, it's like you think you're doing us a favor just by being here, and the bills say otherwise." I took a slow breath. "I've been paying for groceries every week. I bought your daughter's school supplies. I helped with the car repairs last month. That's not rent," Daniel snapped. "Those were choices, and now we need help with the actual cost of living." "Rent?" I repeated. "Daniel, I gave up my house to move here. You asked me to come. When I got sick, you said—" "I didn't think it would be permanent," he interrupted. "You've been here 2 years. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not violently. Just a slow, internal splintering." I reached into my wallet, pulled out a checkbook I kept mostly untouched. My hands trembled a little, but I wrote out the full amount of the bill. He didn't even look at it. He took the check, ripped it in half, and let the pieces fall to the floor between us. "We don't want your money, Mom," he said coldly. "We want you to take responsibility. If you can't afford to stay here, maybe it's time to think about moving out." My mouth went dry. "You're kicking me out over a misunderstanding?" "It's not a misunderstanding," Emily said. "You've been using us, emotionally, financially. You act like you're owed something." That's when I realized they weren't asking me to leave. They had already decided. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I stood up and walked out of the room, their silence following me like a heavy fog. I packed slowly. Just the essentials. Few outfits, my medications, the locket Gerald gave me on our wedding day. Everything else, I left. When I came back downstairs with 2 trash bags, Daniel was waiting at the door. "Here," he said, holding out a folded piece of paper. It was a list of local retirement homes. "You'll be more comfortable," he said. "You can have your own space." Comfortable. I stepped outside into the biting air, the porch creaking beneath my feet. The door shut behind me. Firm. Final. That's when it happened. I looked down at the trash bags in my hands, and I remembered something. A savings account. Years ago, after Gerald passed, I opened it for Daniel. A quiet fund, meant for emergencies or something beautiful. Maybe a down payment on a house or a college fund for his children. I kept it in my name, but earmarked for him. Over the years, I added to it slowly. Birthdays, bonuses, tax returns I never touched, I never told him. I wanted it to be a surprise someday, a gift, a gesture that said, everything I've ever done was for you. But now it was something else entirely. That night, I checked the balance. Just over $100,000. I looked at the screen. Then I looked at the door I had just been pushed out of, and I made a quiet decision. The next morning, I went to the bank. I removed his name from the account, signed the paperwork with a calm hand. The teller smiled politely. "Is there anything else we can help you with today?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "That's all I needed. Thank you." He thought. He was closing the door on a burden. He didn't realize he'd just shut out his biggest blessing. I sat alone on the edge of a motel bed that smelled faintly of bleach and old air conditioning. A single suitcase rested by the door. My 2 trash bags, my moving boxes, were slumped in the corner like discarded luggage at a train station no one intended to claim. I stared at the floral print curtains for a long time, and then, without warning, the tears came. Not loud. Not messy, just slow, steady, and quiet, like grief that had finally made itself at home. I don't know how long I sat like that, but at some point I whispered aloud to the empty room, "Gerald, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to our boy." The silence after that was unbearable, so I curled up on the bed and let the memories come. Daniel was born during a thunderstorm, the kind that rattled windows and made nurses murmur about power flickers. But he didn't cry when he arrived. He looked around, wide-eyed, solemn, like he was already taking the world in. The nurse called him an old soul. I remember how tightly he clung to my finger when they first placed him in my arms. As a toddler, he'd climb into my lap even when he was too big and rest his head on my shoulder after daycare. He hated when I was late, even by 5 minutes. "I thought you forgot me," he'd pout. I'd promise, over and over again, "I will never leave you, sweetheart." And I didn't. Not when Gerald died. Not when I had to take on triple shifts. Not when Daniel struggled in high school, unsure of who he was or what he wanted. I was there. Always. He was shy, gentle, sensitive. When other boys taunted their mothers, he defended me. "She's stronger than any dad," he once told a friend. After his graduation, we danced in the living room to an old Sinatra record. He wore his cap and gown. I wore my nursing scrubs and tired feet. "You did it, Daniel," I said. "No, Mom," he said, resting his forehead against mine. We did. How does a boy like that become a man who tapes a utility bill to his mother's door? I kept asking myself that question over and over again as I sat in that motel room with its humming ice machine outside my window. The next morning, I called the one person I hadn't spoken to in a long while, Sylvia, my best friend from the hospital. We hadn't talked much since her move to Arizona after retirement, but she picked up on the first ring. "Louisa?" Her voice cracked. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said simply. "Not even close." I told her everything. The months of tension, the eviction, the bill, the silence. She didn't interrupt, not once. Just let me speak until I ran out of words. Then she said something I hadn't allowed myself to think. "Sweetheart, that boy doesn't see you as a mother anymore. He sees you as a problem." I closed my eyes. The truth of it felt like a second slap. Sylvia offered to fly me out. "Stay with me as long as you need," she insisted. "No judgment, no expectations." But I wasn't ready to run. Not yet. I needed to stand still long enough to feel everything. That afternoon, I took a walk through a nearby park. There was a young mother on a bench, bottle-feeding her baby with one hand while scrolling through her phone with the other. Her diaper bag was overstuffed and falling open. She looked exhausted, distracted, overwhelmed, and I smiled because I remembered that version of me. That weary, stubborn, fiercely loving woman who gave everything without keeping track. I remembered holding Daniel through fevers, through nightmares, through broken hearts and missed college exams. I remembered walking home in the snow after a 12-hour shift just so I could use the last $20 in my wallet to buy him a birthday cake. I had not been a perfect mother, but I had been his mother, entirely. And now he had pushed me out like yesterday's. Trash. That night I stood at the mirror and studied the woman looking back at me. She was older, softer around the edges, but there was steel under her skin now. For the first time in months, I opened the envelope with my latest bank statement. There it was again, $104,218.91 still untouched, once earmarked for him. Now, it was mine again. Not just the money, the power of it. The control I had given away, bit by bit in the name of love, was slowly coming back. No, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't show up at his doorstep, wouldn't demand apologies, that wasn't my style, but I would make sure he knew that the bridge he burned carried more than just a mother's warm meals and weekend babysitting. It carried the legacy I had, built with bleeding hands and a full heart, and he had chosen to watch it collapse. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? You're not alone. Share your story below. I'm listening. With a single signature at the bank, I erased him from the future he never even knew he had. The morning I truly exhaled came 3 days after I left my son's house. I was still waking up early, my body trained by decades of hospital shifts and motherhood. But this time, I wasn't waking up to someone else's needs. No toddler screaming, no laundry piles. No unspoken tension humming through the walls, just stillness. I sat at the small desk in my motel room with a cup of lukewarm coffee and opened my worn notebook. I hadn't written in it since Gerald died. But that morning, I began a new page. Wrote, "This time, the rescue will be for me." Later that day, I called the bank again, this time to move the money. I shifted it into a private account, separate from the trust I had originally planned. I closed the shared account entirely. "No. Beneficiary listed?" the manager asked. "No," I said calmly. "No one for now." It felt final. Quiet, like the soft click of a door closing. That same afternoon, I took a cab to a small, privately owned storage unit on the edge of town and rented a space. Clean, climate-controlled. I stored my important documents, the family, photo albums, and my jewelry, especially the sapphire ring Gerald had given me on our 20th anniversary. I kept the key on a chain around my neck, not out of paranoia, but out of principle. For the first time in years, everything that mattered to me was mine and mine alone. Sylvia called again that night. She was gentle with me, as if she knew I was still balancing on the edge of something. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "I know," I replied. "But I think I need to, at least for now." She understood. Good friends always. She gave me the number of a real estate agent in town, someone low-key who worked with retirees and widows. "Ask for Darlene. Tell her you're ready for something new, but peaceful." I did. Darlene met me at a quiet cafe the next morning. She had soft gray curls and a clipboard thicker than a Bible. We talked for over an hour. I told her I wasn't looking for anything flashy, just a place with light, maybe near a park, somewhere I could walk without hearing the echo of old arguments. She nodded. "We'll find it, and when we do, it'll feel like breathing again." While I waited, I began volunteering at the church thrift store down the road. The first day I showed up, the pastor's wife smiled and said, "We always need help sorting donations. But more than that, we need people who know how to listen." So, I did. I listened to women escaping abusive marriages, seniors grieving lost spouses, a young single mother trying to decide whether to keep her baby or give it up. And every time I offered them comfort, I felt a small stitch pulling my soul back together. It didn't erase what Daniel had done, but it reminded me that I wasn't just what had been taken from me. I was still a giver, still a woman of value. 2 weeks later, Darlene found the place, a modest 2-bedroom condo on the edge of a small lake. Nothing fancy. But it had wide windows, good bones, and a balcony that caught the afternoon sun. I walked through it slowly, running my fingers along the walls, imagining where I'd place the photo of Gerald and me on our honeymoon, wondering what it might feel like to wake up and hear only birds, not judgment or footsteps. "I'll take it," I said. "I paid in full. No mortgage. Just peace." The day I signed the papers, I sat in my parked car and cried, not from sadness, but from the quiet joy of reclaiming my life. Not the life I had planned, but the life I had chosen, deliberately. The next day, a letter arrived. At the motel, forwarded from Daniel's address. It wasn't from him. It was from the bank. A routine notification about the closed joint account and updated beneficiary status. I imagined his face reading that letter. I imagined him asking questions. Wondering what happened to the money he never knew existed, the safety net he had assumed was just waiting to catch him. But I didn't feel spiteful, just resolved. Because the truth is, I wasn't taking revenge. I was simply correcting a mistake. The mistake of giving everything to someone who stopped seeing me as human. Now I was giving to myself. That night, I slept for 8 hours straight. No tossing, no shallow breathing. Just sleep, real, healing sleep. And when I woke up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, not yet, but freedom. She thought I'd crumble once I left her house. Instead, I built a life she was no longer welcome in. 2 weeks after I moved into the condo, the first phone call came. I didn't answer. The number was familiar. Daniel's. Cell. I watched it buzz on the screen, the name glowing like an old wound reopened. Then it stopped. A minute later, another call came in. Same number. This time, a voicemail. His voice was tight. Too careful. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing okay. The kids miss you. Maybe we can talk?" I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because I didn't trust myself not to say too much, or worse, too little. The silence I left him in said enough. 3 days later, he texted. "Car repairs came up, about $2,800. Things are a bit tight right now. If you could help, we'd really appreciate it." There it was. Not even a full sentence after pretending I'd never existed. Now I was useful again. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I powered off the phone and went for a walk by the lake. The water was still that evening, the surface like glass. I watched a father skip rocks with his daughter. The little girl laughed as each stone bounced, short and clumsy, but full of joy. And I thought, this is what love should look like. Not conditional, not transactional, but playful, present. That night, I turned the phone back on. There was another message. "Mom, I know we had our differences, but we're still family. Don't let money come between us." I almost laughed. It wasn't money that came between us. It was cruelty. It was erasure. It was the moment he stopped seeing me as a person and started treating me like a bill to be managed. I still said nothing. The next morning, an email came from the bank. A security notification. Someone had tried to access the closed account. I called immediately. The manager confirmed it. "Yes, someone attempted to log in using old credentials. We've flagged the account and reset all linked information." Was a name attached to the attempt? I asked, even though I already knew. There was a pause. Then, "Yes, Daniel." I thanked them, hung up, and felt something inside me settle. It wasn't satisfaction. It was clarity. He hadn't changed. He wasn't calling to reconnect. He was calling to recover what he thought was his. Later that evening, I got a voicemail from Emily. Her voice, unlike Daniel's, was biting and fast. "Wow, real classy, Louisa. You made a huge mistake taking his name off that account. You think this makes you look strong? You look petty. You're punishing your grandchildren because you can't handle boundaries. Grow up. I played it twice. The first time, I felt anger rise in my chest. The second time, I felt nothing, because she was right about one thing. I had changed, but not in the way she thought. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was protecting myself for the first time in decades. And as for the grandchildren, I had already set up a new trust in their names, one Daniel could never touch. That was the legacy I would leave, not bitterness. Boundaries. A week later, Daniel came to my door. He didn't text, didn't call, just showed up. I saw him through the peephole, hair disheveled, eyes tired. I opened the door, but didn't step. Aside. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. "Can I come in?" "No," I said, not unkindly. "But you can speak." He shifted awkwardly. "Look, I messed up. We both said things. I was stressed. We were drowning in bills. And you weren't. Really, trying to meet us halfway." I let him talk, watched the way his eyes danced everywhere but my face. He reached into his coat pocket. "I brought something," he said, pulling out a framed photo. One I hadn't seen in years. It was of the three of us, me, Daniel, and Gerald, at Daniel's college graduation. We were laughing in the picture. Unposed, candid, real. "I found this in a box," he said. "Thought you might want it back." I took it gently, held it for a moment. "Thank you." He nodded, waited, expected something, but I didn't open the door wider. Finally, he asked, "Is there any chance we can fix this?" I looked him in the eyes. "You didn't just hurt me, Daniel. You humiliated me. You erased me from my own family. And when I was at my lowest, you handed me a bill and a trash bag." He flinched. I know, Mom. You want to fix this?" I said quietly. "Start by understanding that an apology isn't a key. It's a seed. If it grows into something real, I'll be here. But I won't open my door just because you finally noticed it exists." He nodded, silent, heavy, and then he turned and walked away. He thought I'd be grateful for crumbs of regret, but I'd already learned how to feed myself. I thought that would be the end of it, that Daniel's walk down my front steps was a quiet goodbye. But 2 days later, there was a letter in my mailbox. No return address. His handwriting. I opened it slowly, bracing myself. "Mom, I meant what I said. I know I hurt you. But Emily's been pushing me to ask again. Have you really changed the accounts? Are you sure this is fair? You said once you were doing it all for me? I guess I never thought you'd stop." There it was. Not a real apology. A reminder. A guilt grenade packed in lowercase politeness. I read the letter once. Then, I burned it in a ceramic dish on the patio. Watched the edges curl black, smoke rising into the evening air like a prayer for detachment. That night, I sat with a photo album. Not to remember him, but to remember me. The woman I'd been before the role of mother swallowed everything else. I saw snapshots of myself at 24, pregnant, smiling in our tiny kitchen with mismatched chairs. Me and Gerald at the lake, hair windswept, cheeks flushed with love. Me holding baby Daniel with the exhausted joy of someone who didn't yet know the price of lifelong sacrifice. And for the first time, I saw her again, not just as his mother, but as me. That realization settled something inside me. So the next day, I took action. I met with my attorney, a quiet man with kind eyes and an efficient manner. I handed him a folder, my new will, beneficiary designations, letters to my grandchildren. I want it airtight, I said. He nodded. No contact allowed through the children unless approved by you. You're protecting the inheritance, not punishing anyone. Exactly. I left his office and walked a few blocks to the post office. Mailed the letters to each grandchild. sealed envelopes with instructions for when they turned 18. No cash inside, just stories. Real stories. About how much they were loved. About who I was before I became just Grandma. I didn't know if I'd be part of their lives again, but I wanted them to know the truth one day. I wasn't weak. I wasn't bitter. I had simply learned when enough was enough. A week passed, then another, and then Emily showed up. I saw her standing outside the building through my window, holding one of the kids on her hip. Her eyes scanned the balconies, until she spotted me. She waved, but it wasn't friendly. It was performative, calculated. I opened the door before she could knock. "Hi," she said, her tone artificially sweet. We were just in the neighborhood. The child, my youngest granddaughter, smiled shyly at me. I waved back but didn't. Step forward. "We thought maybe you'd like to spend some time with her," Emily said. "She's been asking for you." The ache in my chest almost cracked me open. But I didn't move. "I'd love to," I said softly, "but I'm not comfortable being used as a bargaining chip." Emily's face darkened. "Excuse me?" "I know why you're here," I said. "Daniel's told you about the account, about the changes. You're not just here for her. You're here for a chance to fix something you both broke, and not because you're sorry, but because you're worried." "That's not fair," she snapped. "No," I replied, voice steady. What wasn't fair was being treated like a burden in the home I helped build. What wasn't fair was being dismissed, disrespected, and thrown out like I never mattered. She adjusted her grip on the child. "This isn't about you anymore. This is about family, about stability." "I gave you both stability," I said, quietly but firmly. "And you cashed it in. Now you'll have to build your own." Emily looked like she might argue again, but something in my eyes must have warned her. She turned without another word and walked away. As she reached the parking lot, I heard the child say, "Why didn't Grandma hug me?" And Emily whispered, "Because she's upset." Wrong, because I'm healing. That evening, I stood at my kitchen window, watching the sunset pour gold over the lake. I was tired, but not heavy. Sad, but not broken. I was more than what they'd tried to reduce me to. For the first time in decades, I was not someone's mother, not someone's crutch. I was just Louisa again, not erased, not discarded, reclaimed. 2 days later, Daniel sent one last message. "I get it now. You're serious. I don't expect forgiveness, but if there's ever a way back, I'll be waiting." I didn't respond. Sometimes silence is the kindest truth. He thought I'd fall apart without their approval. Instead, I built a life where their absence felt like peace. A year has passed since that day on the porch, since the door closed behind me, since I walked away from the version of myself that kept apologizing just to keep the peace. And you know what? I've never felt more whole. People often talk about freedom like it's something loud, parades, divorce parties, champagne toasts to starting over. But real freedom? It's quiet. It's drinking your morning coffee without tension, sitting at the table with you. It's knowing no one will twist your words or tape a bill to your door. It's peace. I've built a life that no one handed to me. Again. But this time, it's just for me. The condo is modest, but filled with light. Every piece of furniture was chosen slowly, deliberately. A soft gray couch, warm yellow throw pillows, a bookshelf filled with my old nursing textbooks, poetry collections, and one framed photo of me and Gerald on our last anniversary, his arm around my shoulder, our faces crinkled with joy. I volunteer at the local hospital twice a week, reading to patients who have no family nearby. I've joined a book club with women who've survived things they don't always speak of, but carry in their eyes. We laugh more than we cry. Sometimes I walk the lake trail at sunrise when the world is still. I breathe in the silence. I say, thank you, to no one in particular, just to the universe, for giving me one more chapter to write. And Daniel? He calls every few months now. The conversations are civil, even kind, but brief. We don't talk about the past. We don't talk about the account. He doesn't ask. He knows. There's a polite distance between us, like people who once shared a deep love but now recognize each other from across a canyon that won't be bridged in this lifetime. And that's okay. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means letting go of the hope that the other person will ever understand the damage they caused. Emily hasn't reached out again. The silence between us is permanent. I've accepted that. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelines, but the grandchildren. That's where the new roots are growing. Last month, Daniel's eldest, my granddaughter Lily, called me on her own. She's 11 now, old enough to find me in the phone book. "Grandma," she said shyly, "I miss your stories." I swallowed, the lump in my throat. "I miss telling them," I said. "We talked for 20 minutes about school, her new kitten, and the way Emily burns grilled cheese every single time." I smiled, imagining it. I didn't ask her to put her mother on the phone. I didn't ask about the house. I just listened, and then I mailed her a letter the next day. A story, a real one, written just for her. About a woman who lost her home, but built a kingdom out of kindness and courage. I ended it with, "Love is something you plant, water, and wait for. And no matter what people say, it remembers where it came from." I know Lily will understand in time. The trust fund I created for her and her siblings is growing. I've locked it behind a legal firewall even Daniel can't access. They'll get it when they're ready, not just in age, but in understanding. Maybe one day they'll read this story. Maybe they'll ask why things happened the way they did. And when they do, I'll be honest. But not bitter. Because this story isn't about revenge, it's about awakening, and my legacy won't be measured by how much I gave away. It will be measured by how fiercely I protected the last part of myself I still owned, my dignity. What would you have done in my place? Was I too harsh or finally fair? Let me know in the comments below. He thought cutting me off would leave me empty, but the truth is, I've never stood taller than the day I decided I didn't need to shrink for anyone again. They say motherhood is forever. That once you become a mother, your heart beats outside your body for the rest of your life. I used to believe that, but what they don't tell you is this. Motherhood is not a contract for lifelong mistreatment. It is not a vow to abandon yourself, just to keep your child comfortable. Yes, I will always be Daniel's mother. But I am no longer willing to be his doormat, his fallback plan, or his emotional punching bag. That shift didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, through the tears in a motel room, through the silence of unanswered calls, through the echo of my own name spoken back to me in a voice that wasn't accusing or pleading, but steady. Louisa. I am Louisa. Not just mom. Not just grandma. I am a woman who once worked 16-hour hospital shifts and came home to help with homework. A woman who paid off her husband's debts, nursed her child through illnesses, buried a husband too young, and still found joy in rainy afternoons. And secondhand books. I am not what Daniel did to me. I am what I chose to do next. People ask me if I miss him. Yes, but I miss the boy, not the man he became. I miss the little boy with jam on his fingers and too many questions about the stars. The boy who cried when I left for night shifts and waited up just to make sure I came back. That boy loved me without condition. Somewhere along the line, life, or maybe comfort, taught him that love could come with expectations. That if I wasn't useful, I wasn't valuable. That's what broke my heart. But here's the part I didn't expect. Once the heartbreak passed, what remained was strength. I thought I needed their approval to feel whole. I thought I needed to stay small so I wouldn't lose them. But the moment I stepped away, I grew into someone I hadn't met in decades. Someone brave enough to walk alone. Someone wise enough to know the difference between love and dependency. I don't tell this story to shame my son. I tell it because I know I'm not alone. I've met women in grocery stores, at church, at the bus stop, women who whisper the same words I once did. I don't know where I went wrong. I gave them everything. To those women, I say, maybe you didn't go wrong. Maybe you just gave it to someone who stopped seeing it, and you don't owe them the rest of your life to prove your worth. You've already proven it 1,000 times, in lunchboxes packed with care, in paychecks split in half, in birthdays remembered even when yours weren't. In every sleepless night, you carried a family on your back. You were never the burden. You were the bridge. If they choose to burn that bridge, let them. You will still stand, strong, centered, and whole. I've stopped waiting for Daniel to become the son I remember. Instead, I've started becoming the version of myself I forgot, and in that process, I've found something unexpected. Peace. It's not loud, it doesn't post pictures, it doesn't beg for validation, but it stays. It holds me. It reminds me that I'm enough. Every morning I wake up, walk out onto my balcony, and feel the sunlight on my face. I whisper a small blessing. Thank you for another day to be myself, just myself. That is my legacy now. Not the money I set aside, not the furniture I passed down, but the courage to leave when I was no longer seen, and the grace to stay gone, even when they came calling. He may have closed the door on his mother, but I opened the door to myself and I walked through it, not looking back.